in the lesson 2, we discuss about the different approaches and theories of crime. So at this lesson, I learned to comprehend the various theories of crime causation and able to explain the reason in the occurrence of the crime in the community through it. And now, I can also appreciate the approaches in studying criminology. And now, I can also recognize the contribution of the broad school of thoughts in the formulation of criminal justice system. And now, I can value the importance of having a theory and explaining criminality. So, at this lesson, we tackled about the different approaches in the explanation of crime. So, we have subjective approach. It deals with the biological explanation of crimes focused on the forms of abnormalities that exist in an individual before and after the commission of the crime. Under the subjective approach, we have anthropological. It deals with the study of physical characteristic of an individual offender with non-offenders in attempt to discover difference covering criminal behavior. Second approach, under the subjective approach, is the medical approach. It is an application of medical examination for the explanation of mental and physical condition of the individual prior after the commission of the crime. Next is the biological approach. It is an approach that according to Tapp, heredity is one of the major factors why a person commits crime. Another is the physiological approach. Maslow explained that the deprivation of the primary needs is a strong factor in commission of crime. And the next is psychological approach, which is concerned in the deprivation of psychological needs of an individual, which constitute the development of deviation of a normal behavior resulting to repulsive sentiment and action. Next is psychiatric. This approach explained that mental disease is the reason why a person violates norms and laws of the land. And the last one is the psychoanalytical approach. According to Freud, the imbalanced condition of ego and superego causes the deviation of an individual to the norms of the society. Another approach for the explanation of crime is the objective approach. It deals with the study of groups, social processes, and institutions as influence to behavior. Under this is the geographical approach. It is considered tomography, natural resources, geographical location, and climate lead an individual to commit a crime. Another approach under this is the ecological approach. According to Park, this is concerned with the biotic grouping of men resulting to migration, competition, social discrimination, division of labor, and social conflicts as factor of crime. Another is the economic approach. Merlin believed that poverty or economic difficulty pushes a person to commit crime in order to support his needs. And the last approach under the objective approach is the sociocultural. It is about Cohen's affirms that institution, education, politics, and religions are major factors in the commission of crimes. And the last type of approach in the explanation of crime is the contemporary approach. It is the combination of different approaches to explain the reason or causes for the commission of crimes, which focuses on the psychoanalytical, psychiatric, and sociological theories. Another topic that we have discussed under the lesson 2 is the theories of crime causation. Theory is any system of ideas arranged in rational order that produce general principle which increase our understanding and explanations. It is the foundation of criminology and criminal justice, and we study theory to know why we are doing what we do now. In the early beginning, we have demological theory. It asserts that a person commits wrongful acts due to the fact that he was possessed by demons. And by the pre-20th century, 1738 to 1798, criminology has been divided into three broad schools. We have classical, neoclassical, and positivist. So for classical school of thought, the basis of criminal liability is human free will and the purpose of penalty is retribution. While the neoclassical school of thought argued that there are situations or circumstances that make it impossible to exercise free will, and this is a reason to exempt the offender from conviction. The positivist school or Italian school, this school of thought emphasizes scientific treatment of criminals, not on penalties to be imposed, because it is believed that man is subdued occasionally by a strange and morbid phenomenon, which constrains him to do wrong in spite of contrary in his own volition. maintained that crime as an any act is a natural phenomenon and is comparable to disaster or calamity. That crime as a social norm and moral phenomenon which cannot be treated and checked by the imposition of punishment, rather rehabilitation of the enforcement of individual measures. Another person who contributed in the theories of crime is Enrico Ferri. He is an Italian born 1856, the author of the Theory of the Imputable and Denial of Free Will. It was published in 1878. He agreed with Lombroso on the biological basis of criminal behavior, but his interest in socialism led him to recognize the importance of social, economic, and political determinants. His greatest contribution was his attack on the classical doctrine of free will. He believes that criminals could not be held morally responsible because they did not choose to commit crimes, but rather were driven to commit crimes by conditions in their lives. Next is Rafael Garofalo. He treated the roots of criminal behavior not to physical features but to their psychological equivalents, which he is referred to as moral anomalies. He classified criminals as murderers, violent criminals, deficient criminals, and lascivious criminals. Then, one of the founding father of sociology, David Emil Durkheim, he proposed anomaly theory, which explained the non-existence of norms in society encourages a person to commit crime. Next is the psychoanalytical theory. It was developed by Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. He believed that criminality is the manifestation of psychological conflict and criminal behavior is a form of neurosis. Crimes happen due to the poor of moral development, inadequate childhood socialization, defective conscience, or emotional maturity. Also, Freud suggested that three elements of personality, the id, ego, and superego, which is not developed properly, may result to commissions of crimes. Next is the psychoanalytical theory. It was developed by Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. He believed that criminality is the manifestation of psychological conflict and criminal behavior is a form of neurosis. Crimes happen due to the poor of moral development, inadequate childhood socialization, defective conscience, or emotional maturity. Also, Freud suggested that three elements of personality, the id, ego, and superego, which is not developed properly, may result to commissions of crimes. Then we have somatotyping theory. It was formed by Ernest Kretschmer, a German psychiatrist, originated the idea of somatotyping. We have three major types of psyche. Aesthetic, it is skinny and slender with lean, slightly built and narrow shoulders, prone to commit fraud and theft. Next is the athletic. It is tall, strong, and muscular who are usually involved in crimes against person because they are generally violent. Next is the phoenic. It has broad face, massive neck, medium height, and with rounded bodies, generally commit crimes related to trickery, swindling, and violence. Another somatotyping theory was created by William Sheldon. He believed that heredity is the principal determinant of behavior and the psyche is the defendable and unswearing indicator of personality. Sheldon combines the biological and psychological explanation to understand deviant behavior, which classified body psyche. He has three classifications of body psyche, the endomorphy, mesomorphy, and ectomorphy. The next theory is the differential association theory. Simply believes that criminal behavior is learned, not inherited. It is developed by Edwin Sutherland, the Dean of Modern Criminology. He stated that while criminal behavior is an expression of general needs and value, it is not explained by the general needs and values since non-criminal behavior is an expression of the same needs and values. Another theory is the containment theory. This theory is a form of control which suggests the series of both internal and external factors contributes to criminal behavior. It was according to Walter Reckless that external forces are composed of outer structure like lack, opportunities, poverty, and unemployment, while the internal structure are the individual self-controls ensured by strong ego. Another theory was the social class conflict and capitalism theory. Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, and William Bounger are the main proponents of this theory. It argues that upper class in capitalist society is responsible for the conception of penal law and ideological biases in the interpretation and enforcement of laws. Next theory is the strain theory. It was leading by the Robert King Merton. Criminality to lack of absence or norms. He asserted that man who failed to achieve higher status goals in life accused him to commit crimes in order for that status goals to be attained. And next theory is the subculture theory. According to Albert Cohen, the lower class cannot effectively socialize to the middle class and higher classes because the latter would not accept the behavior of the former. Thus, the members of the lower class gather together to share their common concerns, which subsequently form a subculture that rebuts the middle class values. The next theory is the neutralization theory. Grisham Sykes believes that a person will follow or break law depending whether he will be benefited or not. Next theory is that differential opportunity theory. According to Lloyd Olin, there are different opportunities for lower and upper classes of society. The lower is usually deprived of the abundant resources that the upper is enjoying. This causes the underprivileged to get involved to illegitimate activities in order to achieve their ambition. So, next theory is the labeling theory. The founder of this theory is Frank Tevantom, Edwin Lemnert, and Howard Becker. Labeling theory, it is concerned with how the self-identity and behavior of an individual is influenced or created by how that individual is categorized and described by others in society. So, we have many different theory that really contribute to the judicial system or criminal system right now. So, we have instrumentalist theory by Earl Richard Quinney, differential identification theory by Daniel Glasser, conflict of culture theory by Torsten Selin, theory of evolution by Charles Darwin. Chicago School, the founder are Robert Ursa, Ernest W. Burgess, and Louis Wirth, the professor of sociology department at University of Chicago. Next is the law of imitation by Gabriel Tarde. Then theory of human physiognomy, the study of facial features and their relation to human behavior, and physiognomy, the study of facial features of criminals to determine whether the shape of ears, nose, and eyes and distance between them were associated with antisocial behavior. We have phrenology, the study of shape of the skulls and bumps of the head to determine whether these physical attributes were linked to the criminal behavior. We have also the psychopathic personality, a personality disorder characterized by enduring antisocial behavior, diminished empathy and remorse, and disinhibited or bold behavior. Ernest Houghton conducted a study involving comparison of a large sample of prisoner and non-prisoner in the U.S. Houghton concluded that criminals are biologically inferior. Dr. Charles Goring, an English statistician who studied the case of histories of 3,000 convicts and found that heredity is more influential as determiner of criminal behavior than environment. He accepted that criminals are physically inferior to normal individuals in the sense that criminals tend to be shorter and have less weight than non-criminals. And the last one is the mental deficiency theory. These are group of theories which are primarily focused on the psychiatric makeup of the individual, stating that among others that human intelligence is the big factor in the criminality. The early researchers found out that majority of criminals tested for intelligence were shown to have low IQ. Therefore, the effect of low IQ on criminal behavior is more significant than those educated with high IQs. And IQ is more closely related to crime rather than that of social class. So, those lessons and topics are really helpful for me to become familiar and to understand why people or the offender create the committing of the crime, and why are those approaches are really a big factor why person is urged to commit a crime. And I also understand the different theory or the brief history of criminology through through the early stages until now.